All right, welcome to the show, everybody. Got an awesome one for you today. So, there was a little bit of an event that unfolded yesterday. Many people are saying it's a little thing called Brazilian January 6th. So, Bolsonaro supporters stormed the Brazilian Congress, and the parallels, guys, are out of this world. This thing it's like we live in a simulation, and somebody just ran it back on January 6th. So, we're going to talk about that in just a second. I'm going to lead with that. And then we have McCarthy talks to the media after barely eking out a victory to become Speaker of the House in the 15th round. We have the backstory on that near brawl that almost unfolded in Congress. There's some interesting stuff that went on behind the scenes that we can dive into. Donald Trump gets a primary challenge. Oh boy. We're already there, man. We're already like in full swing for election season, even though it's so early. And I have a conservative activist who apparently is addicted to going around and grabbing dicks. Unsolicited dick grabs and dick fondlings. And of course, needless to say, this is somebody who's been deeply involved in anti-gay politics. Okay, so perhaps unsurprising given the track record of all the other vehemently anti-gay people, but nonetheless, we'll talk about that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So yesterday was wild, man. Yesterday was wild. We had a situation where Bolsonaro supporters stormed Congress in Brazil, but there are many aspects of this that are actually kind of hilarious. One of them is nobody was even there. Like, I guess Congress wasn't even in session. Remember, when January 6th happened in the U.S., you had the official proceedings going on inside where they were trying to, finally declare Joe Biden as the winner. And so even though the attempt at the January 6th coup was kind of doomed to failure from the beginning because of lack of organization and lack of serious people involved, etc., you did have a theory there where they said, like, if we get Mike Pence to say the magic words, with this one weird trick, we can overthrow the last election and Donald Trump can remain president. And so, of course, Mike Pence didn't do that. And then you had the Trump supporters storm the Capitol, try to disrupt the event, and in their mind, they think, well, if we disrupt this, then we could, prevent Biden becoming president and maybe even eventually get it overturned. And what ended up happening is they broke up the event, as everybody knows, but then later on in the day, all the politicians came back and they went through what they had to go through, and it was over. It was done. But there was at least a theory there. With this, like, January 6th knockoff event, there was nothing even going on in Congress. Like, they were storming through empty halls. Jair Bolsonaro was literally in Orlando, Florida, wandering around a Publix grocery store. There's some hilarious videos coming out of Bolsonaro, like wandering around suburban streets in Orlando and greeting people, wandering around a Publix. I mean, I tweeted yesterday that he very well could have been in an Arby's drive-thru farting in his car as his supporters stormed Congress. So David Dole's got a little bit, some videos here and stuff to show us on this this copycat event. Here he is.
Supporters of former Brazilian president, far-right leader Jair Bolsonaro have now stormed the Capitol there in Brazil. Though it appears to be under control at this moment, I'm going to show you some clips from...
Yeah, by the way, it was quashed. I'm going to get to numbers later on how many arrests there were and stuff, but this thing is already, it's done.
How absurd all of this is. Clearly, this reminds us of January 6th. There is an obvious impact here from what happened on Jan 6th, be it on Canada when it came to the Freedom Convoy, be it here on in Brazil when it comes to this. So let me get to all of this. And this is all happening as Jair Bolsonaro is wandering a grocery store in Florida. So I'll get to that clip as well. And I'll also get to reactions from American lawmakers, including the Biden administration and from Lula himself. But first here,
I'm going to spoil the Biden reaction for you guys right now. So Biden, there was a strong statement that came out, I believe, from the State Department that was like, we're 100% on the side of Lula and the Brazilian institutions, and this is an attack on democracy, etc. And the reason why that's important is because Western capital, as a general rule, sides with the more right-wing parties in Central and South America. And so, and you guys know the history of it. You guys know what happened during the Cold War. We overthrew so many democratically elected leaders over there and, put in puppet dictators and pretended like, oh, no, this is actually democracy. And so to have the Biden administration say, no, we're with Lula, that's actually it wasn't a foregone conclusion, and so it's wonderful news.
This all comes after Lula has been sworn in. He is the new leader in Brazil. He is a fantastic individual who actually cares about people. He comes from extreme poverty. He rose up through a union, became the leader of that union, eventually became the president of Brazil for 2 terms, has now come back, defeated Bolsonaro in that election, now sworn in, just to give you an indication of his impact when he last was leader. So this is an article from 12 years ago in The Guardian. Lula ends his presidency tomorrow with a 90% approval rating. 90%!
I've never seen anything like that before in my life. Usually at the end of your time in office, even if you were an effective leader, your approval is down to like 50%, 48%, maybe if you're lucky, like 55%. 90% approval rating, and that just speaks to, honestly, how good he was as a leader. So I told you guys this a while ago. I made a list of like some of the more important facts about Lula. He ran 3 times and lost before he won. So that's to give people hope that, hey, even if you're down and out, like, you know, you could fight and eventually the left can win. He decreased child malnutrition by 46%. He grew the middle class in Brazil from 50% to 73%. He did a $40 billion housing initiative. He did a family allowance program where you'd get money contingent on sending your kids to school. He spent billions of dollars on infrastructure and job creation. He lifted 20 million people out of poverty. He was in a metal workers union and led strikes. He substantially cut back deforestation. He turned a trade deficit into a surplus. He was ultimately a pragmatic politician when it came to foreign policy because he was able to work with both Hugo Chavez in Venezuela and George W. Bush. And he officially recognized Palestine as a state. So really, through and through, we're talking about a successful leader. We're talking about a beloved leader. And that may be one of many reasons why, this attempt failed. But by the way, look at this. So this, to be fair, this is not from the Brazilian January 6th year, which I guess we'll call January 8th. This is from a previous Bolsonaro rally. But look at the parallels. Look at the parallels between these Trump supporters in the U.S. and the Lula, not Lula, definitely not Lula, Bolsonaro supporters in Brazil. This is ridiculous. It's just total copycat stuff. And I'm going to talk more about this later, but like the lack of originality in the world drives me crazy.
Can you imagine that in any other country? I should say, in particular, in the West. Doesn't happen. 90% approval rating because he lifted 20 million people out of poverty.
Based.
So, and we're not like this guy. He's not even really far left in terms of being a socialist. He is simply a social democrat.
Yep.
He did some basic provisions to help lift people out of poverty, and it was incredibly effective. So, as I just said, he was just recently sworn in. Bolsonaro did not attend the inauguration.
Just like
he
Trump.
Instead escaped to Florida. So we'll get to questions around that and if he should be allowed to do that. That was brought up by a certain lawmaker, so I'll show you that in a bit. But here is a top line from AP. Supporters of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro stormed Congress in the capital on Sunday, climbing on top of its roof and breaking the glass in its windows. Other demonstrators were gathering out.
Just like January 6th. Everything about this is just like January 6th.
Outside the presidential palace and Supreme Court. So there is a very familiar image. This looks like Jan 6, but Brazil. So let me show you some videos. Here's Dr. Jennifer Cassidy here saying all eyes need to be on Brazil right now. Democracy is completely under attack. Bolsonaro supporters are invading Congress, the presidential palace, and realms of power in Brazil. So let me just play. We don't really need too much audio here, but... So in a bit, I will get to, there is some new reporting now around why so many people were able to be there. I'll get to that in a minute, but look at this incredible scene. Sounds like there's maybe fireworks going off.
The parallels truly are striking. I mean, it's unbelievable how similar it is.
David Adler here, writing live from the Penalto Palace. Bolsonaristas smashed, destroy, and ransacked the inside of the same building where Lula was inaugurated last week. Once again, police presence is nowhere in sight.
Look at that. This is just like that dude who was carrying the Confederate flag inside Congress. This looks like, again, identical to January 6th.
Let's look at the inside. Doesn't appear to be any police presence here. Clowns. Let's check what else is here. So also from David Adler, the Bolsonaristas have now invaded the floor of the federal Senate.
Look at that.
God, this is just... it's almost comical in terms of how similar this looks to January 6th. You just replace Americans with Brazil.
Okay, you guys remember all the videos from January 6th where they were in the Senate and they were like taking pictures of official documents and they were standing up at the front of the room and all this. I think we live in a simulation. This may have pushed me over the edge, and now that's it. We're in a simulation.
Now, to be clear, there doesn't appear to be any lawmakers in Brazil present while this is going on. There's also reporting that there doesn't seem to be any connection to any actual lawmakers on the inside, the way that there is or was for Congress in the U.S. when it came to people like Josh Hawley who were in support of the insurrectionists. So it is a bit different in that. All right. I mean, it's just a bunch of clowns running around. I'm not even sure what else you really need to see here. Can't even hold the camera properly. Look at this loser. Wow, good job. Good job, moron. All right. One more clip, two more clips. Here is Brazil's Congress remains flooded and in flames. In terms of the physical and institutional damage, there is no comparison to the Jan 6 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol.
Look at that. So it looks to me like they probably, busted some pipes open for no reason, and so now, like, there's flooding going on and stuff in there. Look.
So this is like a big mess there.
Look at that. Trying to break windows again, just like January 6th.
Trying to break windows. Just a group of children. They're fighting for a far-right leader who downplayed COVID-19, got it himself like a million times, ended up in hospital a bunch of times because of it. Someone who helped to destroy the Amazon rainforest. Luckily, Lula has now...
Someone who has said, I'm in favor of fascism and I'm in favor of a dictatorship. Somebody who is viciously anti-gay.
Worked directly with indigenous communities to completely reverse that and work with them in terms of policy, which is really good to see. But that's just two examples of how Bolsonaro has been a complete disaster. Got one more clip here. All right, 16 seconds. We can do this.
What you're going to see here is this guy. He's recording himself crying, like, we love Bolsonaro, whatever the fuck. But remember, this is just like that guy he almost looks like him too. The guy who stormed into Nancy Pelosi's office and like put his feet up on the desk and they were recording him and he was talking. This guy reminds me of that guy. My mind is absolutely blown at the connections here.
Yeah, this guy looks very passionate. Look at him. Fighting for Bolsonaro. Oh. Fighting hard for Bolsonaro. Oh, yeah, you go. Good job. Meanwhile,
now, there are reports that, a lot of these people got bussed in there. So clearly there was some planning, there was some organization at a higher level. It looks like the police were totally unprepared for this, which then raises questions about, is there infiltration in, certain segments of the Brazilian police? It's very, very possible. It's very possible. Now, there's also been some reporting that it's possible Bolsonaro sort of helped with the planning while in Florida because some top official in Brazil flew to Florida and met with him, and then soon after they met, then you get this, and that guy is allegedly connected to what happened here. So I don't know what's going to happen from here, but you have now U.S. politicians calling for Bolsonaro to get extradited back to Brazil to face charges. By the way, Bolsonaro is already under investigation for corruption, and that is one of the reasons why he fled to Brazil in the first place. So he's already looking at, being a criminal and potential time behind bars. And so now with this, it adds another level to it. And it is kind of hilarious when you think about it, because the right always talks about how, these immigrants they're criminals and we need to deport all of them. And here you have an immigrant in Bolsonaro who is clearly a criminal, and you have the Democrats calling for Bolsonaro to be extradited and face charges in Brazil, and you don't hear a peep out of any of the right-wing politicians. Trump, to this point, hasn't said a goddamn word about this, even though this guy's clearly the world's saddest copycat. And yeah, the lack of originality is the thing that drives me crazy. Like, at least do something that's not really stale and predictable and exactly like something that happened previously. Like, do something that makes me think, oh, well, that's new, and not a single part of this is new. Meaning, it's amazing. Like, we can't even get interesting wannabe dictators anymore. It's just like, sad. And the cult of personality angle of this too drives me crazy, because like with Trump and with Bolsonaro, it's like you have a small percentage of the population, whatever it may be, maybe 20%, 25%, that are super diehard, respectively, in the US for Trump and in Brazil for Bolsonaro. And it's like, why? Like, what is it? It's hard to conclude anything other than cult of personality, because these aren't people who actually substantially and substantively improve the lives of their people. I mean, Trump governed like a standard establishment Republican. Bolsonaro was in no way anti-establishment when he was leading. These right-wing parties fundamentally always bolster the establishment. So, like, what is it? And I have to say, I don't have any sympathy for these people, because when you look at Lula, he did very clearly and provably improve people's lives in Brazil. So, like, on this front with these people, there is no material analysis. You know what I mean? Maybe these are like the business owner class, and so they didn't like that, Lula was helping the poor and not them or whatever. But like, certainly this isn't downtrodden people, crying out for reform to help everybody. That's not what this is. This is more like cult of personality idiots who are in over their heads and did the saddest coup attempt of all time. So let me show you some more here. This was hilarious to me. Populism Updates tweeted this. Bolsonaro supporters cheering the arrival of the military right before getting arrested by them. Like, what did they expect to happen? I guess if I'm steelmanning their case, maybe they thought, hey, we storm Congress, we break windows, we make a stink, and maybe that'll spark an uprising nationally where everybody will come to our side and the police and the military will intervene on our side and they'll get, Lula out of there. But really the opposite happened. There was, a circling of the wagons around Lula, and the military was here to go after these people like the criminals that they are. So for them to think like, oh, here's the military, bro, we're good. It's like, they're coming to arrest you dippies. Here we have the Supreme Court of Brazil ordered the removal of Governor of Brasilia, Ibanez Roca, from office. The measure comes after the security forces of Brasilia were accused of colluding with the vandals who invaded public buildings. So they're already at the point where they are removing governors because of their connection to what happened here. And look, you got to keep it real. When you compare Lula to, say, Biden, there might actually be consequences for these people under Lula. Now, actually, to be fair, when it comes to Biden, the low-level people who like stormed the Capitol, broke the windows, the people who committed crimes on the ground, there has been justice brought to them. There's been all these cases. A lot of people have been locked up. Hundreds, maybe thousands of them have been locked up. So in the U.S., there was some semblance of justice. But, the point is, the politicians who were sort of connected to this and the ones who were involved in the organization of it, in the U.S., they largely got away with it. And of course, in the last election, 53% of the Republicans who were running for office were open deniers of the previous election. Some people were there on January 6th who ran for office. Mastriano was one of them. He ended up losing. But point is, if they did the same thing, then you'd have some of the high-level people, the politicians even, who would be kicked out of office or arrested. And in the case of Brazil, we already have some movement where people in positions of authority who are involved in this, Bolsonaro's going after them. Then we also have President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, along with the president of Brazil's upper and lower houses of Congress and the Supreme Court, signed a decree repudiating what they called as coup acts in Brazil. You also had, he said they're basically going to go through the police departments with a fine-tooth comb and remove anybody who was involved with this kind of stuff, who was sort of involved in the planning. Now they say Brazil police arrest 300 after Bolsonaro supporters storm Congress. I read another article, I don't know if it was Washington Post or New York Times, but they said it's actually about 1,200 people who were arrested. So I don't know the exact number, but there's already movement to stop this. And look, it'll be interesting to see what happens from here. Obviously, all these people should be brought to justice. I like the fact that he's going after people who have authority, who are potentially involved. When it comes to Bolsonaro, yeah, I mean, I hope he does get extradited back to Brazil. I hope he does, and I hope he faces charges. And look, it looks to me, at least at this moment, the Supreme Court is on the side of Lula, and then the military, or certainly massive factions of the military, are on the side of Lula. And it looks like maybe there were some police who are on the side of Bolsonaro here and helping these rioters. But, you know, what percentage? And is this gonna snowball into something worse? My gut instinct right now, honestly, says no. This was a sad whimper, and it was a copycat event of January 6th, which failed miserably here. And so it looks like it was that this has been snuffed out. Like, it's over. It's done. And I think Lula will overall be a little harder on these folks than Biden was. So the parallels really are just absolutely absurd. And it looks like Trump launched a million different, little hanger-ons to him who try to copy him in every conceivable way, even to the point where they're copying his biggest failures and his saddest events. And so that's what this is, man. That's what this is. So in the same way that Trump is a massive loser with everything around January 6th, it looks like Bolsonaro was a massive loser with everything around January 8th. And a lot of people made the point, and they were correct now, that with what happened on January 6th, it's never just a one-off event. Now you lay the precedent, and you make it more likely stuff like this happens in the future. And so we do live in a tumultuous time where things are degrading on a regular basis, and I don't want to know where it goes from here, because it can get worse and worse. But ultimately, very pathetic, just like Bolsonaro's presidency. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.